While I was abroad, my wife sent divorce papers and said, "Even our daughter agrees, lol." I thought, this will make things easier for me and signed the divorce papers immediately. I transferred everything to my wife's name. What happened next will blow our mind. I remember the exact moment the envelope landed at my doorstep. The courier, a young man with an indifferent expression, handed it over without a word, completely unaware that he had just delivered the death sentence to my marriage. A simple white envelope, no different from 100 others I had received over the years, but this one carried something far heavier than paper. It carried finality. I turned it over in my hands, staring at my name, Nathan Carter, printed in cold, emotionless black ink. There was no Cinder's name, but I didn't need one. I already knew who it was from. Madeline Carter, my wife of 30 years. My fingers were steady as I tore open the seal, but my heart was a different story. A part of me already knew what was inside, yet another part clung to the last thread of hope. The foolish belief that she would at least talk to me before doing something this drastic. I unfolded the crisp pages and read the words that changed everything. Divorce petition. The words blurred for a moment before sharpening into something undeniable. I skimmed down past the legal jargon and formalities straight to the demands. A substantial amount of alimony. My breath came slow and controlled, but inside a storm was brewing. Alimony. After everything I had provided, after decades of sacrificing my time, my energy, my very life for this family, the absurdity of it nearly made me laugh. I read further, and the pit in my stomach deepened. She had already signed, not a word to me, not even the courtesy of a conversation, just a set of neatly signed documents demanding that I, the man who had built everything we had, now pay her for the privilege of leaving. And then a final twist of the knife. Our daughter, Lily, was listed as supporting the divorce. I ran a hand through my hair, forcing myself to breathe. I had always known that Madeline's influence on Lily was strong, but to see my own child side with her mother without hesitation, that cut deeper than anything. Before I could stop myself, I picked up my phone and dialed Madeline. She answered on the third ring. "Nathan," she said smoothly as if she had been expecting my call. "You didn't hesitate, did you?" My voice was steady, but I could hear the edge beneath it. A pause. Then she exhaled softly. "I don't see why I should have. This was bound to happen sooner or later." I swallowed the bitterness rising in my throat. "You didn't think we should talk about it first?" She gave a small, almost amused chuckle. "What is there to discuss, Nathan? You're never here. Always on a plane. Always in some meeting." It's about time I started thinking about my own happiness. I gripped the phone tighter. Happiness? And what about Lily? What about, "Oh, don't bring Lily into this," she snapped. And for the first time, there was something real in her voice. "She agrees with me. She sees it too. You were never present." My jaw tightened. "So you turned her against me?" Madeline let out an exasperated sigh. "Nathan, she's a grown woman. She made up her own mind." I closed my eyes, trying to suppress the raw betrayal pulsing through me. Lily had once been my little girl, the child who used to run into my arms whenever I came home from a long trip. Now, she was standing on the opposite side looking at me like a stranger. Madeline's voice softened, but I could hear the smug satisfaction beneath it. "This will make our lives easier, Nathan. Our lives. Not yours, not mine." She was speaking for both of them, her and Lily, as if I had never been a part of their world. I took a slow breath, staring at the divorce papers on the table. The ink had dried. The decision was made. "You'll get everything you deserve," I finally said. There was a pause, then a quiet of approval. "Good. Then let's not make this harder than it needs to be." I didn't respond. Instead, my mind shifted into a different gear, the same gear I used in high-stakes negotiations. The one that removed emotion and focused solely on strategy. Madeline thought she had won. She thought I would roll over, sign the papers, and hand her everything without a fight. But what she didn't realize was that I never walked away from a negotiation without ensuring it ended on my terms. She wanted everything? Fine. She just didn't realize what everything actually was. I ended the call and set my phone down. For the first time in years, I felt something close to relief. The game had just begun. I never expected my life to unfold this way. 30 years ago, if someone had told me that I would one day be sitting in a foreign country, staring at divorce papers from the woman I had once loved, I would have laughed in their face. Back then, I was young, ambitious, and naive, too focused on my career to understand the depth of the choices I was making. But I see it all clearly now. Madeline wasn't always like this, or maybe she was, and I was just too blind to see it. I met her at Hamilton and Clark, the trading company where I had started as an eager young salesman determined to climb the corporate ladder. She was a receptionist, the woman everyone wanted to be around, effortlessly charming with a beauty that drew attention wherever she went. I was different from the other men who chased after her. Fresh out of college, I had no experience with women, no time for dating, no desire to play games. But Madeline, she set her sights on me. It started with subtle gestures, a lingering glance, a playful smile, a note passed along with my morning coffee, scrawled with little compliments about my hard work. She knew what she was doing, and I, completely oblivious to office politics, thought nothing of it. Then, one day, she handed me a hairpin. I remember the way she did it, so casually, as if it meant nothing. I turned it over in my hands, confused, until I saw the small inscription on the back, her phone number. Most men would have been ecstatic. Me? I ignored it. I was too focused on my career, too busy proving myself to care about flirtation. I barely gave it a second thought, but Madeline wasn't the type to be ignored. She confronted me outside the office one evening, stopping me before I could leave. "Why didn't you call me?" she asked, arms crossed. Her expression unreadable. I hesitated, caught off guard. "I've been busy," she smirked, shaking her head. "Too busy to even say hello? Too busy for dinner?" Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. The way she was so calculated, so persistent. But I was young and I had no experience with women like her. So I said yes. That first dinner led to more, and before I knew it, we were together. At first, it felt right. She admired my dedication, spoke about our future with excitement, always encouraging my dreams. "You're going to be an executive one day," she would say, eyes shining, "and I'll be right there beside you." I believed her. 3 years later, I proposed. "I'll be by your side forever," she said that night, clutching my hand with so much conviction that I never once doubted her sincerity. If only I had known. Marriage and the slow unraveling. At first, things were good. After we married, Madeline quit her job, something she claimed she had always wanted. "Why work when I can focus on our home?" she had said with a smile. It made sense to me. I was making enough money for both of us. I wanted to provide. Then Lily came along. The pregnancy was difficult. Madeline was constantly ill, too exhausted to do much around the house. I took on extra responsibilities, cooking, cleaning, making sure she was comfortable. It was my duty as a husband. I told myself things would get better after Lily was born. They didn't. Madeline's exhaustion turned into constant dissatisfaction. She resented how much I worked, but when I stayed home to help, she resented that too. There was no winning. "You're always gone," she would say, voice laced with irritation. "I'm doing this for us." I would remind her for Lily, but it was never enough. The warm, supportive wife I had married vanished, replaced by someone who looked at me like I was just another piece of furniture in the house, something useful, but not particularly valued. I chalked it up to stress. New parents struggled. It was normal. But as the years passed, I realized something terrible. Madeline wasn't struggling. She had simply stopped caring. Lily was different. As a child, she adored me. I was her hero, her protector, her father. I would come home from a long trip, and she would run to the door, arms wide, waiting to be lifted into the air. Those were the moments that made everything worth it. But as she grew older, things changed. She started gravitating toward Madeline, picking up her mother's attitudes, her mannerisms, her entitlement. I would hear them whispering together, giggling over something, only for them to go silent the moment I entered the room. When I tried to talk to Lily, I was met with disinterest at best, irritation at worst. "Dad, not now," she would say, brushing past me. I convinced myself it was normal. Teenagers were rebellious. They needed space. But then the comments started. "Dad, you're always working. You don't even know what's going on in my life. Mom's right. You never have time for us." I didn't understand. I had done everything for them, given them everything. And yet, somehow, I was the problem. The house I paid for, the private schools, the vacations, the designer clothes Madeline insisted Lily needed, none of it mattered. I was just a wallet to them. The final years of our marriage were a slow, painful death. Madeline and I no longer shared a bedroom that had ended nearly 2 decades ago. The intimacy we once had was a distant memory, something from a different lifetime. I told myself I was staying for Lily, but the truth? I was just delaying the inevitable. There were moments when I thought about divorce. I imagined starting over, finding someone who actually valued me, who didn't see me as an ATM and an inconvenience rolled into one. But every time I considered it, I thought of Lily. She wasn't the little girl who ran into my arms anymore, but she was still my daughter. And despite everything, I couldn't bring myself to walk away. So I stayed. I worked. I sacrificed. And in return, Madeline sent me divorce papers without a single conversation. She made the choice for me. And Lily? She sided with her mother. All those years. All that effort. Wasted. But as I stared at those papers, something shifted inside me. Maybe this was my chance. Maybe this was my freedom. Madeline thought she had won. She thought I would hand everything over, sign the papers, and disappear. But what she didn't realize was that I had spent decades negotiating high-stakes deals, studying people, learning how to play the game better than anyone. And now, it was my turn to play. She wanted everything? Fine. She just didn't understand what everything truly was, and when she finally figured it out, it would be too late. They say blood is thicker than water. That no matter how much the world changes, your family is supposed to be the one constant you can rely on. But what happens when you realize that the people you sacrificed everything for never truly saw you as family? That realization didn't come to me all at once. It happened in pieces, small, sharp fragments that cut deeper the more I tried to ignore them. I still remember when Lily was little, how she used to run to me when I got home from a business trip. She would throw her tiny arms around my legs, giggling, telling me how much she missed me. Those were the moments I cherished most. No matter how exhausted I was, no matter how much stress I carried from work, hearing my daughter's laughter made it all worthwhile. But somewhere along the way, that little girl disappeared. The shift, it started subtly. Lily stopped waiting at the door for me. Then, she stopped asking me to read her bedtime stories. By the time she was a teenager, she barely looked up from her phone when I walked through the front door. Madeline always said it was just a phase. Teenagers are like that, she told me, rolling her eyes as if I were overreacting. So I gave Lily space. I try not to take it personally, but then I started noticing the conversations. Whenever I entered the room, they would stop talking. I would catch the tail end of a joke, the sound of laughter between them, and then silence. They weren't even trying to hide it. Madeline would smirk, Lily would shrug, and I would tell myself I was imagining things, but I wasn't. The mockery. The first time I overheard what they really thought of me, I told myself it wasn't a big deal. It was late. I had just finished packing for a business trip and was heading to the kitchen to grab a cup of coffee when I heard their voices from the living room. "He's making such a big show of packing by himself," Madeline muttered, her voice laced with amusement. Lily snorted. "Well, at least it keeps him out of our way." My grip tightened around the coffee mug. I cleared my throat before stepping into the room. Lily looked up, feigning innocence. "Oh, Dad, are you all packed?" Madeline didn't even look at me. She just crossed her arms and kept watching TV. I forced a smile. "Yeah, early departure tomorrow." I wanted to say more, to ask them why they resented me so much, why they made me feel like a stranger in my own home, but I knew I wouldn't get an answer. Instead, I went back to my room where I had been sleeping alone for years. A house, not a home. Madeline and I hadn't shared a bedroom in nearly 2 decades. I don't even remember how it happened. One night, she told me she was tired and wanted space. Then, space became separate beds. Separate beds became separate rooms. And before I knew it, we had become nothing more than 2 people living under the same roof, sharing a last name, but nothing else. At first, I thought it was temporary that she would come back to me. She never did. I should have left then. I should have walked away the moment I realized my marriage was a hollow shell. But I stayed. For Lily. For the family I thought I had. Lily's true colors. It wasn't just the distance. It was how easily she dismissed me. By the time she was in college, our interactions were transactional at best. "Dad, I need money for books." "Dad, can you send me money for rent?" "Dad, my friends and I are going on a trip. Can you help?" Not once did she ask how I was doing. Not once did she call just to check in. I was a walking ATM to her. Madeline, of course, encouraged it. "She's young, Nathan. Let her enjoy herself." And I did. I let her enjoy herself. I paid for everything. But what hurt the most was when I overheard her talking to her friends one night. I had just walked in from work exhausted, my tie loosened, my briefcase still in hand. As I stepped into the hallway, I heard her laughing in the kitchen, the sound light and careless. "Ugh, my dad is so boring," she said. "He's always going on about responsibility and hard work. He's so old-fashioned." Her friends giggled. "Yeah, but at least he's loaded," one of them replied. "That's gotta count for something." Lily didn't even hesitate before responding. "I mean, yeah, he's useful. Useful. Not loved, not respected. Useful." I stood there rooted in place, listening to my daughter reduce me to nothing more than a convenience. And for the first time, I asked myself a question I had never dared to before. What if she never really saw me as her father? The final straw. The day I received the divorce papers, I wasn't just betrayed by Madeline. I was betrayed by Lily too. Madeline's name was there, cold and formal. But underneath, in black ink, was Lily's signature. She had sided with her mother without even talking to me. I called Madeline immediately, my voice controlled but tight. "You didn't even give me a chance to talk to Lily?" I asked. Madeline laughed. "She doesn't need to talk to you, Nathan. She understands. You were never really here." I clenched my jaw. I worked to give you both everything. And now you're going to give me what I deserve. She said it so easily. Like I meant nothing. Like I had never mattered. In the background, I heard Lily's voice. That's right, Dad. You have to take responsibility. Responsibility? For what? For giving them a life of comfort? For making sure they never wanted for anything? For being the one person they could rely on? Only to be tossed aside when I was no longer useful? Something inside me shifted. They thought I was going to break. They thought I would crumble under the weight of their betrayal. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I exhaled slowly, staring at the divorce papers one last time before setting them down. Fine, I said. Madeline hummed. Pleased. Good, then we won't have to drag this out. I didn't argue. Didn't fight. Because I had already decided. I would give them everything. But they had no idea what everything truly meant. And when they finally realized, it would be far too late. Some truths come slowly, creeping into the cracks of your life, like water seeping through stone. Others hit you all at once, leaving you breathless, forcing you to look at the people you thought you knew and see them for what they really are. My truth arrived like a wrecking ball. For years, I had ignored the signs. I had chalked up Madeline's indifference to marriage fatigue, told myself that Lily's growing distance was just part of being a teenager. I made excuses for the way they treated me, convinced myself that all families went through rough patches. But deep down, I think I always knew. I just wasn't ready to face it. Not until I had no choice. The moment that changed everything. It happened in Bangkok. I had been scheduled to meet a client for dinner. A last-minute arrangement after my business negotiations had wrapped up earlier than expected. The restaurant was one of those high-end places. The kind where people spoke in hushed voices and the waiters moved with rehearsed elegance. My client called, apologizing that he was running late. No problem, I told him, settling in with a black coffee. I had been flipping through emails when a familiar voice caught my attention. I looked up. Across the restaurant, partially hidden by a pillar, Madeline was sitting at a table, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. Her posture was relaxed, her expression animated. She was giddy, and across from her sat Carter, my former boss. I froze. Carter had been a senior executive at Hamilton & Clark before retiring a few years ago. He had been the one to introduce me to Madeline, even toasting at our wedding, calling us the perfect couple. But what I was seeing now, this was not the dynamic of old acquaintances catching up. There was an intimacy between them. The way he leaned in slightly, the way she rested her fingers against his wrist as she laughed. It was the kind of touch reserved for lovers. I should have walked away. I should have left before I heard anything that would destroy the last remnants of the life I had built. But I didn't. I sat there, hidden by the pillar, and I listened. The betrayal confirmed. Lucy's really into K-pop idols now, Carter was saying, chuckling. She's been talking about traveling to Seoul for a concert. Lucy, the name meant nothing to me at first, until Madeline spoke. Well, she gets it from you, she said, stirring her wine. Your daughter has expensive taste. I stiffened. Carter smiled. I just want her to have the best. Madeline sighed. She knows who you are, you know. She's proud of it. I gripped my coffee cup so hard I thought it might shatter. Lily. They were talking about Lily. Carter wasn't just an old friend. He was her father. And Madeline knew. She had always known the weight of the lie. I couldn't breathe. The entire room faded. The sounds of clinking glasses, the murmured conversations, the soft music, none of it existed anymore. I had spent nearly 3 decades raising another man's child, believing she was mine, sacrificing everything for a family that had never belonged to me. And they had laughed about it, mocked me. He really has no clue? Carter asked, amusement lacing his tone. None, Madeline said, smiling. He's always been too busy working. He never even questioned it. I gritted my teeth. You know, there was a moment after he proposed when I thought I might get caught, she continued, swirling her wine. But I let my guard down. And once Lily was born, it was easy. Carter chuckled. Well, it worked out. He raised her well. Madeline clinked her glass against his. And now, he's going to take care of us both for the rest of his life. Shattered illusions. I don't remember how I got out of that restaurant. One moment, I was sitting there, gripping my coffee. The next, I was outside, the warm Bangkok air pressing against my skin, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might stop. I walked for hours, aimless, lost in a fog of rage and humiliation. Every memory I had of Lily, her first steps, her school plays, her graduation, all of it was a lie. She wasn't my daughter. She never had been. And yet, I had built my entire life around her and Madeline, believing they were my family. I thought about every time I had been mocked, dismissed, treated like an outsider in my own home. I had never been their husband. I had never been their father. I was just their provider. The DNA test. The next time I saw Lily, she was passed out on the couch, her makeup smeared from a night out. I stood over her staring at the daughter I had loved more than anything, and I knew what I had to do. I needed proof. A few strands of hair. I used glass from the sink. It didn't take much. The results came back a week later. 0% probability of paternity. I sat at my desk, staring at the paper, my hands trembling. I had known, but seeing the confirmation in black and white, was something else entirely. Something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to be their fool anymore. I wasn't going to give Madeline another cent. The plan takes shape. Most men in my position would have lashed out. They would have confronted their wife, screamed at their child, demanded answers. But I wasn't most men. I had spent my entire career learning how to navigate high-stakes negotiations, how to strategize, how to come out on top. And now, I had one final deal to make. I sat back, breathing deeply. Madeline wanted a divorce? Fine. Lily wanted to side with her? Fine. They thought they were going to take everything from me. They had no idea what was coming. I let them believe they had won. I signed the papers. I played the role of the defeated husband. But while they were celebrating their victory, I was preparing their downfall. They had spent decades lying to me. They had treated me like a fool. Now it was my turn to return the favor. Revenge is best served cold. And when you've spent 3 decades being played, manipulated, and discarded like an old coat, you learn that patience is your greatest weapon. I didn't lash out. I didn't confront Madeline in some dramatic soap opera-style showdown. No raised voices, no slammed doors. That's exactly what she expected. She wanted to see me broken, desperate. She wanted the satisfaction of watching me beg. So I gave her nothing. I signed the divorce papers without a single question, without an ounce of hesitation. And in that moment, I saw the first flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. She thought she had won. She had no idea that I had already set the pieces of my plan in motion. The perfect disguise. When I returned home from Bangkok, I was met with a strange calmness. The air in the house was different, lighter, like something had been lifted off me. Maybe it was the weight of the truth. I had spent years walking on eggshells in my own home. Every conversation with Madeline was a landmine. Every interaction with Lily was filled with an invisible tension. Now I was free. But freedom alone wasn't enough. I had to make them feel what I had felt. Madeline thought she was taking everything from me. The house, the money, the status. She thought she was walking away with the ultimate prize. She was wrong. The first move. I made a call. Not to a lawyer, not to a friend, but to a financial investigator. I wanted a clear picture of every asset in my name, every joint account, every investment tied to Madeline. And what I found, it was worse than I expected. She had been bleeding me dry for years. Luxury shopping sprees, hidden accounts, money funneled into trips I never knew she took. And Lily? She was just as guilty. She had been using my credit cards for years, running up thousands in designer clothes, expensive restaurants, and 5-star vacations. While I was working overnight shifts, missing holidays and birthdays, they were out spending money like it grew on trees. Time to turn the tables. They thought they were stripping me of everything. They had no idea that I had already begun rewriting the rules of the game. The first step was separating assets. Madeline wanted everything? Fine. I would give her everything, but only the parts that were worthless. Within a week, I had transferred ownership of all the valuable assets out of my name. The luxury condo, gone. The stocks, liquidated. The business investments, cashed out. And the house was never in my name to begin with. Madeline's victory. The day the divorce was finalized, Madeline celebrated like she had won the lottery. She had a smug, satisfied look on her face as we sat in the lawyer's office. "You'll find that everything is in order," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I hope we can handle this maturely." I nodded, keeping my expression blank. Of course, she expected me to argue over assets, to fight for the house, the money, the investments. Instead, I sat back and let her believe she had won. She walked out of that office thinking she had just secured the easiest divorce settlement in history. The realization, it didn't take long for reality to hit her. A few days later, I got a call. I didn't answer. Then another. And another. Finally, she left a voicemail. "Nathan, I need to talk to you. There seems to be a mistake." I smirked. "A mistake?" "No, Madeline. The mistake was underestimating me." I let her sit with the confusion for a while before finally answering. "What's the issue?" I asked casually. "What's the issue?" She snapped. "The accounts are empty, Nathan." "Empty? The investments? Where are they? The condo? Where's the deed?" I let out a small laugh. "Oh, that? It was never mine. The condo was always under my friend Marcus's name. I was just renting it." Silence. Then her voice dropped to a furious whisper. "You tricked me." "No," I corrected. "You tricked yourself." Lily's panic. The next call wasn't from Madeline. It was from Lily. Dad, she started, her voice unusually soft. Mom's freaking out. She says there's no money left. That's right, I said simply. She let out a nervous laugh. Come on, Dad. Stop messing around. You still have money, right? I took a sip of my coffee before answering. You tell me, where do you think my money went, Lily? Into your handbags? Your vacations? The car your mother bought you with my credit card, she stammered. I didn't think. No, you didn't, I interrupted. Neither did your mother. And now you both get to live with the consequences. The silence on the other end was almost satisfying. For years, they had laughed at me, dismissed me, used me. Now, they were the ones left scrambling. Carter's downfall. I wasn't done yet. I had one last card to play. Carter, the man who had betrayed me, who had sat across from my wife in that restaurant, gloating about the years he had fooled me, was about to face his own reckoning. I had been collecting evidence for months. Every transaction, every shady business deal, every skeleton in his closet. And when the time was right, I sent it all to his ex-wife. She had no idea that her husband had an illegitimate child, that he had been funneling money into Madeline's lifestyle for years. But when she found out, she took everything. His house, his savings, his retirement fund. He was left with nothing. And just like that, the man who had thought he was untouchable was suddenly begging for help. The final move. When Madeline called me again, her tone had changed. She was no longer smug, no longer triumphant. She was desperate. Nathan, she said quietly, we need to talk. I leaned back in my chair. Do we? She hesitated. I made mistakes. But you don't have to do this. You don't have to leave us like this. I smiled. The audacity. Madeline, I said, my voice calm. You left me a long time ago. She was silent. And then, for the first time in decades, she started crying. I let her feel every bit of the betrayal I had felt. Then, just as she had done to me so many times before, I hung up the phone. Checkmate. Madeline thought she had taken everything from me. But in the end, she was the one left with nothing. There's a certain kind of silence that comes when someone realizes they've lost everything. It's not the loud dramatic outburst of someone throwing a fit. No, it's a heavy, suffocating silence. The kind that wraps around a person's throat, making it impossible to speak. I had spent 30 years providing for Madeline and Lily, pouring everything I had into a family that had never truly been mine. And now, they were finally facing the consequences of their betrayal. Madeline had walked into that divorce with confidence, convinced she was walking away with everything. She had bragged about it, laughed in my face, and expected me to crumble under the weight of her demands. She thought she had won until she realized she had nothing. The bank account that vanished. It took 3 days before Madeline called me again. At first, I ignored her. I let her sit with the reality of her situation, let her feel the panic, the rising desperation as the realization sank in. Then, late one night, my phone buzzed. I smirked when I saw her name flash on the screen. I answered casually. Madeline. Her voice was tight, on the edge of controlled hysteria. What the hell did you do? I leaned back in my chair, sipping my drink. Whatever do you mean? The accounts, Nathan, she snapped. There's nothing left. Where did the money go? I laughed. She was finally catching up. Oh, that money? I said. That was my money, Madeline. And last I checked, I don't owe you a damn thing. She sucked in a sharp breath. That's not you can't just I can. And I did. She let out a harsh laugh, but I could hear the edge of fear creeping into her voice. I have nothing, Nathan. Nothing. You said I'd get everything. I did, I agreed. And you did. You got all the assets that were in my name. I gave you exactly what you asked for. Then, because she knew. She finally understood. I had given her everything that was worthless. The worthless inheritance. She had walked away from that divorce with a property that cost more to maintain than it was worth, bank accounts that had been drained before she ever touched them, and a pile of furniture that had once filled a high-rise condo she no longer had access to. I heard her sharp inhale over the phone. The house, she said quietly. We still have the house. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Oh, you mean the house you and Lily were so eager to claim? I asked. The one I never fought you on? She hesitated. Yes. I chuckled. Madeline, sweetheart, the house was never in my name. Dead silence. I let that sink in. Then, finally she whispered, What? You heard me. You're lying. I'm not. And then it hit her. She never checked. She had been so focused on taking me down, so convinced she was the smarter one that she never even thought to verify who actually owned the house. It was never mine to begin with, which meant it wasn't hers now either. Lily's meltdown. The next call came from Lily. I had been waiting for it. Dad? She started, trying to keep her voice calm, but I could hear the undercurrent of panic. Mom said there's an issue with the house. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Issue? No issue. It's just not yours. A pause. What do you mean? It's not ours. It was never mine, Lily. It belonged to Marcus. I was just renting it from him. The breath she sucked in was sharp. But you promised. I raised an eyebrow. I never promised you anything. Silence. Dad, please. We don't have anywhere else to go. For years, I had been nothing more than a walking wallet to her. For years, she had sided with Madeline, mocking me, belittling me, treating me like I was disposable. And now? Now she needed me, and I didn't give a damn. Carter's collapse. The final call came from Carter. I almost didn't pick up, but I was curious. What did a man with nothing left sound like? Nathan. He said, his voice strained. Carter, I greeted. To what do I owe the pleasure? You didn't have to do this. I smirked. Didn't I? His breath was shaky. You ruined me. No, Carter, I corrected. You ruined yourself. You told her, didn't you? His voice cracked. You told my wife. Of course, I did. I said, unfazed. And I made sure she had every bit of proof she needed to wipe you clean. He let out a bitter laugh. You think you won? I didn't even hesitate. I know I did. The final blow. In the end, Madeline and Lily had nowhere to go. The house? Gone. The bank accounts? Empty. The support system? Non-existent. Carter? Destroyed. I had given them everything they thought they wanted, and in doing so, I had taken away everything they actually needed. And me? I walked away free. For the first time in 30 years, I didn't owe anyone anything. I wasn't a husband anymore. I wasn't a father to a daughter who never saw me as one. I was just Nathan Carter, and I had never felt lighter. Madeline thought she had set me up for failure. But in the end, she had set herself up for ruin, and I had simply let her walk right into it. Betrayal is a funny thing. When you first experience it, it crushes you, leaves you gasping for air, questioning everything. But when you step back and truly see the people behind it, you realize that their betrayal says more about them than it ever did about you. Madeline and Lily thought they had outplayed me. They thought they had their future secured, their lives set up for easy luxury while I was meant to rot in humiliation. But betrayal has a way of circling back, hitting the ones who dealt it far harder than they ever expected. And now, they were scrambling. The desperation begins. After realizing they had no money, no home, and no safety net, the real panic set in. The first time I saw Madeline after the divorce was in a lawyer's office, of all places. I had gone to finalize some last-minute paperwork when I spotted her sitting in the reception area. She looked different. The expensive glow she always carried was gone, replaced with tired eyes and the weight of reality sinking in. She must have felt my presence because she turned, locking eyes with me. For a moment, there was silence. Then, she stood up and approached me. Nathan, she said, her voice softer than I had heard in years. I raised an eyebrow. Madeline. She hesitated. Can we talk? I tilted my head. Talk. We had 30 years to talk, Madeline. You seemed perfectly fine making decisions without me before. She flinched, but to her credit, she didn't back down. I know I messed up, but we don't have to aid each other. I let out a small chuckle. Madeline, you don't get to rewrite the past now that things aren't working out for you. She shifted uncomfortably. It's not just about me. It's about Lily. She's struggling. Oh, there it was. She wasn't here for herself. Not entirely. She was here because she needed something. Because she had nothing left. I folded my arms, my expression blank. Lily made her choice. She's still your daughter, Nathan. I raised an eyebrow. Is she? Madeline's breath hitched. She knew exactly what I meant, but I wasn't going to let her turn this into another emotional manipulation game. Good luck, Madeline, I said simply, turning to walk away. She grabbed my arm. Wait. I stared down at her hand until she released me. Then, without another word, I left. I had nothing left to say to her. Lily's realization. Lily called me a week later. I was expecting it. Her voice was shaky, uncertain. Dad, I remained silent. I know I haven't been great to you, she admitted. I almost laughed. Understatement of the century. She let out a slow breath. I don't know what to do. Mom is freaking out. Carter's a mess. And she hesitated. I need help. There it was, help. After years of ignoring me, of treating me like an ATM instead of a father, she suddenly needed help. I didn't respond. Dad, I finally spoke. Why now, Lily? She was quiet for a moment. I don't know. That's a lie. She inhaled sharply. I guess I just thought you'd always be there. I closed my eyes briefly. And when I was there, what did you do? Silence. You laughed at me. I continued. You used me. You mocked me behind my back. And now because life didn't work out the way you expected, I'm suddenly worth talking to. I could hear her trying to hold back tears. I was stupid. I let out a slow breath. Yes, you were. She sniffled. I don't have anywhere else to go, Dad. For a brief moment, I considered it. I thought about the little girl who used to run to me, the daughter I had once adored more than anything. But then I remembered, she had never really been mine. And even if she had made it very clear what she thought of me when she sided with Madeline. I hope you figure it out, I said finally. That's it, she whispered. That's it. And then for the first time in my life, I hung up on my daughter. Carter's rock bottom. Carter had always been a smug bastard. He carried himself like he was untouchable, like the world bent to his will. But when I saw him next, he was a shell of the man he used to be. His ex-wife had taken him to court and won. Every single hidden asset, every bit of wealth he thought he had secured, gone. His career, over. His reputation, destroyed. I saw him at a cafe one morning. He looked up, meeting my gaze, and for a split second, I saw something I had never seen in him before. Defeat. He swallowed thickly. Nathan. I smirked. Carter. He rubbed his face, looking exhausted. I lost everything. I took a sip of my coffee. I know. His eyes flashed with something. Regret? Anger? Maybe both. Was it worth it? I tilted my head. You tell me, was it worth 30 years of lies? He had no answer. The final goodbye. A month after everything had settled, I got one last call from Madeline. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity won. I answered. Nathan, she breathed. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I let out a dry chuckle. For what? For everything, she said, and I could tell she meant it. But the thing about apologies? They don't fix the past. I exhaled. Madeline, we are never going to be what we were. I know. I nodded to myself. Then take care. And this time, when I hung up, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just peace, freedom. For the first time in 3 decades, I was truly free. No more walking on eggshells, no more playing the fool, no more giving to people who never gave a damn about me. I had lost everything I thought mattered, and in doing so, I gained myself. Madeline, Lily, Carter, they had all betrayed me, but now, they were the ones left picking up the pieces. And me? I was finally alive. Betrayal destroys. It consumes, leaves ruins in its wake, and strips away everything false until all that's left is the raw, unfiltered truth. And the truth was simple. I had been blind for 30 years, but not anymore. Madeline and Lily were gone from my life, left to fend for themselves. Carter had lost everything. The people who had built their lives on lies were now drowning in them. And me? For the first time in my life, I was free. Their final fall. It didn't take long for the dust to settle. With no home, no assets, and no steady income, Madeline and Lily were forced to make difficult choices. At first, they tried staying with friends, but people tend to disappear when you have nothing left to offer. Madeline reached out to her sisters, the one she had spent years bragging to about how she had secured her future by marrying a successful man. They refused to take her in. Lily, once the girl who had sneered at boring jobs, was forced to work at a cafe, serving people who once admired her expensive lifestyle. Carter? He disappeared completely. With his money stripped away, his reputation destroyed, and his health deteriorating, he had no one left. The last I heard, he had left the city, but I didn't bother to find out where. They had all expected to live the rest of their lives in comfort, funded by me. Instead, they had to fight for survival. And the best part? I didn't lift a single finger to make it happen. They had done this to themselves. New horizons. While they were scrambling, I was already miles ahead. After the divorce, I accepted an offer from Marcus, my oldest friend, to move abroad and join his expanding business in Bangkok. I had spent decades being tied down, sacrificing my dreams for a family that didn't deserve me. Now I had no reason to stay. I sold everything I still owned, packed my bags, and left. The moment my plane touched down in Thailand, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. No more cold, silent dinners. No more fake smiles. No more being used. I was done living for others. I was finally living for myself. The phone call I didn't expect. It had been 6 months since I left when my phone rang. I was sitting on a balcony overlooking the city, a drink in my hand, feeling more at ease than I had in years. When I saw the name on the screen, I almost didn't answer. Lily. I let it ring. Then curiosity got the better of me. I picked up. Lily. There was a long silence on the other end. Then a deep inhale. Dad. Her voice was different. Not demanding. Not mocking. Just lost. I said nothing. She let out a shaky breath. Hi. I don't know what to say. I waited. I got a job, she continued. Hi. I work at a cafe. I remained silent. I make minimum wage, she admitted. almost as if it hurt to say. Mom and I were struggling. I let that sit for a moment. Are you happy? I finally asked. She let out a bitter laugh. No. I nodded. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you threw me away. I know. Her voice cracked. I sighed, staring out at the city. I wasn't cruel, but I also wasn't stupid. You made your choice, Lily. I did. Another pause. Then, the quietest whisper. And I regret it. That was the first time she had ever admitted it. It should have made me feel victorious, but all I felt was exhaustion. I had spent too many years caring for people who never cared for me. It was too late. I hope you figure things out, I said simply. She inhaled sharply. That's it. That's it. And for the second time in my life, I hung up on my daughter. Madeline's last plea. A few weeks later, the final call came. This time, it was Madeline. Nathan, she breathed. I stayed silent. I made mistakes, she admitted, her voice soft. I was selfish. And her breath hitched. I lost everything. For the first time in 3 decades, she sounded genuinely remorseful. But remorse didn't erase 30 years of betrayal. I closed my eyes. Madeline, I don't hate you.